A millionaire lost his wallet. A single-mom taxi driver faced a choice that changed everything on a cold November evening. Sarah Mitchell picked up her last passenger, a wealthy businessman who left behind more than just a tip. Inside his forgotten wallet was enough money to solve every problem crushing her and her son. One decision, two paths: keep it and save her child, or return it and lose everything. What she chose next would test her faith, reveal her character, and unlock a destiny she never imagined possible. This is her story. Sarah Mitchell's hands gripped the steering wheel as she waited at the red light. The November wind rattled the windows of her aging taxi, and somewhere in the back seat, a spring had broken through the vinyl upholstery months ago. She had covered it with duct tape, a temporary fix that had become permanent, like so many things in her life. It was 9:37 p.m. Her shift had started at 6 that morning, 15 hours ago. Her back ached. Her eyes burned. But she couldn't go home yet. Not until she had made enough to cover tomorrow's insulin for her son Daniel. Daniel was 12 years old, bright as summer sunshine, and fighting type 1 diabetes with the kind of courage that broke her heart every single day. The medication he needed cost more than she made in a week, even working 2 jobs. During the day, she drove the taxi. 3 nights a week, she cleaned offices downtown after midnight. Sleep had become a luxury she could no longer afford. The light turned green. Sarah pressed the gas pedal and the old Toyota cab lurched forward with a cough. She whispered a small prayer that it would last another month. The mechanic had told her the transmission was failing, but the repair would cost $1,200. She didn't have $1,200. She barely had $12. Her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. A text from Mrs. Chen, her neighbor who watched Daniel while she worked. Daniel's sugar dropped again. He's okay now. Don't worry. Take your time. Sarah's chest tightened. Don't worry. How could she not worry? Daniel had already been to the emergency room twice this year. Each visit added another stack of bills to the pile on her kitchen table. Bills she opened but couldn't pay. Bills that haunted her dreams. She pulled over and picked up her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen, wanting to call home, wanting to hear her son's voice. But Daniel would hear the exhaustion in her tone. He would feel guilty. That sweet, sensitive boy already apologized too much for being sick, as if his illness were somehow his fault. Sarah put the phone down and pulled back into traffic. 1 more fare. Maybe 2. Then she could go home. The radio crackled with the dispatcher's voice. Unit 34. Pick up at the Grand Sterling Hotel. Business District. You available? The Grand Sterling. That was the expensive hotel downtown, the kind of place where doormen wore white gloves and the lobby smelled like imported flowers. People who stayed there tipped well. Sometimes, Unit 34 responding, Sarah said into the radio. I'm 10 minutes out. She made it in 8, weaving through late-night traffic with the practiced ease of someone who had driven these streets for 5 years. The taxi pulled up to the hotel's glowing entrance, and Sarah straightened her jacket, wiping her tired face. First impressions mattered, even when you were exhausted. A man in his 50s emerged from the hotel, talking rapidly on his phone. He wore an expensive charcoal suit, carried a leather briefcase, and had the confident walk of someone who had never worried about money in his entire life. The doorman opened the taxi's back door with a practiced flourish. Airport, the man said without looking up, sliding into the back seat. International terminal. Fast as you can. Sarah nodded, pulling away from the curb. The man continued his phone conversation, discussing stock portfolios and merger deadlines in a language that might as well have been foreign to her. She caught glimpses of him in the rearview mirror, distracted, focused, completely absorbed in his world of millions, while she calculated whether she had enough gas to make it home after this trip. 20 minutes later, she pulled up to the airport departure area. The meter read $43. Keep the change, the man said, thrusting 3 $20 bills at her before grabbing his briefcase and hurrying toward the terminal entrance. $17. Not bad. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. That would buy Daniel's breakfast for the next few days. She was pulling away from the curb when she saw it. A black leather wallet lying on the back seat where the businessman had been sitting, partially hidden in the shadow of the broken spring. Sarah's breath caught. She pulled over immediately, reaching back to grab it. The leather was soft, expensive, the kind that cost more than her weekly grocery budget. She opened it and froze. Inside were credit cards and ID business cards, and her hands began to shake a thick stack of $100 bills. She counted them once, twice, 3 times, not believing her own eyes. $8,700. Cash. Sarah sat in the idling taxi, staring at more money than she had seen in 5 years, more money than she earned in 3 months, maybe 4, the way things had been going lately. This money could pay for Daniel's insulin for half a year. It could fix the taxi. It could catch up the rent that was already 2 months behind. It could buy Daniel new shoes, the ones he needed but never asked for because he knew they couldn't afford them. Her hands trembled as she held the wallet. The businessman's ID stared up at her. Richard Westbrook. An address in the wealthy part of the city. No one knew she had found this. No one had seen her pick it up. The businessman was probably already through security, boarding his international flight. He would cancel his cards, file an insurance claim, and move on with his life. Men like that always landed on their feet. But women like her, single mothers driving taxis at night to pay for their son's medicine, they didn't get second chances. They didn't get lucky breaks. They just got more bills, more problems, more nights without sleep. The wallet seemed to burn in her hands. $8,700, the solution to everything crushing her. Sarah looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. She barely recognized the woman staring back, tired, desperate, pushed to the very edge of what one person could endure. One decision. 2 paths. Keep it and save her son, return it and lose everything. What would she choose? Sarah sat in that parking spot for 20 minutes, the taxi's engine ticking as it cooled in the November night. The wallet lay open on her lap, the cash fanned out like an accusation, or an invitation. She couldn't decide which. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Mrs. Jen. Daniel is asking when you'll be home. I told him soon. He drew you a picture today. A picture. Daniel was always drawing pictures for her, crayon sketches of the two of them holding hands, standing in front of houses they would never afford, smiling under suns that shone brighter than any real daylight. He signed them Love, Danny, in his careful 12-year-old handwriting and taped them to the refrigerator. Sarah closed her eyes. She could see her son's face so clearly, those bright brown eyes, that hopeful smile, the way he tried so hard to be brave when the needle went into his arm for his insulin shots. He never complained, not once, even when she knew it hurt. "Mama," he had said last week, "when I grow up, I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to make medicine that doesn't cost so much money, so other kids' moms don't have to work so hard like you." Sarah had hugged him so tightly that night, hiding her tears in his hair. She looked down at the wallet again. The businessman's driver's license showed a confident man with silver hair and a smile that suggested he had never known struggle. Richard Westbrook, age 54. The address listed a neighborhood where houses started at $2 million. This money was probably petty cash to him. Pocket change. He might not even notice it was gone until his accountant mentioned it next quarter. Meanwhile, she was drowning, working herself into an early grave trying to keep her son alive. Was it really stealing if you needed it to survive? Was it really wrong if you were saving a child's life? Sarah started the taxi. Her hands moved mechanically, pulling out of the airport, heading toward the highway. But instead of turning toward home, she found herself driving toward the address on Richard Westbrook's license. She didn't know why. Perhaps to see how the other half lived. Perhaps to make herself angry enough to justify keeping the money. Perhaps to convince herself that a man who had so much wouldn't miss so little. The neighborhood transformed as she drove. The broken streetlights and chain-link fences of her world gave way to tree-lined streets, manicured lawns, and houses that looked like they belonged in magazines. Each home was more beautiful than the last, with 3-car garages, swimming pools visible through windows, and security systems that probably cost more than her annual income. Sarah pulled up to Richard Westbrook's address and stopped. It was a mansion. There was no other word for it. 3 stories of brick and glass, with white columns framing the entrance, and a circular driveway where a luxury sedan sat parked. Every window glowed with warm light. Even from the street, she could see crystal chandeliers, artwork on the walls, furniture that looked like it came from European antique stores. This man lived in a palace while she lived in a 2-bedroom apartment with water stains on the ceiling, and a heater that only worked sometimes. This man probably spent more on a single dinner than she made in a week. This man wouldn't even notice $8,000 missing. Sarah gripped the steering wheel, anger rising in her chest like a tide. It wasn't fair. Nothing about this was fair. She worked herself to exhaustion every single day, did everything right, tried so hard, and still she couldn't afford to keep her son healthy. Meanwhile, people like Richard Westbrook lived in mansions and left enough cash in taxis to change someone's entire life. She could keep it. She should keep it. Daniel needed it. She needed it. This was the universe finally giving her a break, a chance to catch her breath, a lifeline when she was drowning. Sarah reached for the wallet, and then she saw the light turn on in one of the upstairs windows. A figure appeared, a woman, maybe in her early 50s, wearing a bathrobe. She moved slowly, carefully, with the cautious steps of someone recovering from illness. Even from the street, Sarah could see the woman's thin frame, the careful way she held on to the furniture for support. The woman sat down in a chair by the window, and another figure appeared, Richard Westbrook himself. He must have returned home on an earlier flight, or perhaps she had the wrong day. He knelt beside the woman's chair, holding her hand, speaking to her with obvious tenderness. The woman smiled, touching his face with affection that transcended wealth or status. Sarah's anger drained away like water through her fingers. They were just people. Wealthy people, yes, but people who loved each other, people who worried about each other, people who faced struggles she knew nothing about. The woman in the window was sick. Sarah recognized the signs from the countless hospital waiting rooms she had sat in with Daniel. Cancer, maybe. Or something equally terrible. Money couldn't fix everything. Sometimes it couldn't fix anything at all. Sarah looked down at the wallet in her lap. Her son's face appeared in her mind, clear as a photograph. "Mama," Daniel had asked her last month, "what does integrity mean?" It was a vocabulary word from school. Sarah had been washing dishes, exhausted, barely able to think, but she had stopped and turned to face him. "Integrity," she had said carefully, "means doing the right thing even when no one is watching, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something." Daniel had written it down in his notebook with serious concentration. "That's what you have, Mama," he had said without looking up. "You have integrity." Sarah sat in her taxi outside Richard Westbrook's mansion and realized with sudden, painful clarity what she had to do, not because it was easy, not because it made financial sense, not because the Westbrooks would suffer without this money, they probably wouldn't even notice, but because her son believed she had integrity, and she would rather starve than prove him wrong. Sarah picked up her phone and searched for Richard Westbrook's number. His business card was in the wallet, Westbrook Enterprises, with a direct line listed. It was late, nearly 11 p.m., but she dialed anyway. The phone rang 3 times before a tired voice answered. "This is Richard Westbrook." "Mr. Westbrook," Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady. "My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm a taxi driver. I took you to the airport this evening, and you left your wallet in my cab." There was a long pause. Then a sharp intake of breath. "My wallet. Oh my God, yes, I realized an hour ago. I've been searching everywhere. You have it?" "Yes, sir. Everything is here. I can return it to you right now if you'd like. I'm actually parked outside your house." Another pause, longer this time. When Richard Westbrook spoke again, his voice had changed completely. "You're outside my house right now, with my wallet, and you called to return it?" "Yes, sir." "You know what's inside?" "Yes, sir." The silence stretched so long that Sarah thought the call had dropped. Then Richard Westbrook said very quietly, "I'll be right down." Sarah waited in the taxi, the wallet in her lap, her hands shaking now that the decision was made. 2 minutes later, the mansion's front door opened. Richard Westbrook walked down the driveway wearing casual clothes now, moving quickly. Sarah got out of the taxi, holding the wallet out to him. He took it slowly, opened it, and stared at the contents. Then he looked up at her face, really seeing her for the first time. The exhaustion, the worn clothes, the cheap jacket that wasn't warm enough for November. "You could have kept this," he said. It wasn't an accusation. It was an observation filled with wonder. "Yes, sir," Sarah said, "but I couldn't live with myself if I did." Richard Westbrook continued to stare at her. Then he opened the wallet, pulled out $500 bills, and held them out to her. Please, as a reward. Thank you. Sarah looked at the money. $500. Daniel's insulin for 2 weeks. New shoes. A small dent in the mountain of bills. She shook her head. I can't accept that, sir. I was just returning your property. That's what anyone should do. Richard Westbrook lowered his hand slowly, the bills still extended. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read: surprise, respect, and something else. Something that looked like recognition. What's your name? He asked. Sarah Mitchell. You have children, Sarah? The question surprised her. A son. Daniel. He's 12. And you work as a taxi driver? Yes, sir. And I clean offices 3 nights a week. Richard Westbrook nodded slowly, still studying her face. Then he did something unexpected. He took out one of his business cards and wrote something on the back. I want you to come to my office tomorrow, he said, handing her the card. 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Can you do that? Sarah took the card, confused. Sir, I don't understand. Please, he interrupted gently. Just trust me. Come to my office tomorrow. 2 o'clock. He extended his hand. Sarah shook it, feeling the calluses on her palm against his smooth skin. Thank you, Richard Westbrook said again, his voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what you've just done. Sarah drove home in a daze, not understanding what had just happened, knowing only that she had done the right thing even though it hurt. When she arrived at her apartment building, it was past midnight. Mrs. Chen had fallen asleep on the couch. Daniel was in his room, asleep under his blankets, but he had left the picture on the kitchen table. It showed 2 people, a woman and a boy, standing under a rainbow. At the top, in careful letters, he had written, My mama is my hero. Sarah sat down at the kitchen table and cried for the first time in months, clutching her son's picture and wondering how she would pay for his insulin tomorrow. But at least she could still look him in the eyes. At least she still had her integrity. Sarah almost didn't go. She woke up that morning with 3 hours of sleep, Daniel needing his morning insulin shot, and $47 in her checking account. The rent was due in 3 days. The electric bill was overdue. Her taxi needed gas. The appointment card Richard Westbrook had given her sat on the kitchen counter like a mysterious invitation to a world she didn't belong to. Mama, what's that? Daniel asked, spreading peanut butter on toast with careful concentration. He was trying to help make breakfast, which meant Sarah had to pretend not to notice that he used 3 times more peanut butter than necessary. Just a business card, sweetheart. From who? A man whose wallet I found and returned last night. Daniel looked up, his brown eyes bright. You found someone's wallet. With money in it, yes, and you gave it back, all of it, all of it. Daniel smiled, that heartbreaking smile that made every sacrifice worthwhile. That's because you have integrity, Mama, right? Sarah's throat tightened. I tried, baby. I try. After dropping Daniel at school, watching him walk through the doors with his backpack that was 2 years old and his shoes that were getting too small, Sarah sat in her taxi and looked at Richard Westbrook's business card, Westbrook Enterprises, downtown, in one of those glass skyscrapers she had only ever seen from the outside. The address alone intimidated her. She almost drove to her cleaning job instead. She almost threw the card away. She almost convinced herself that a man like Richard Westbrook was just being polite, that he didn't really expect her to show up, that she would embarrass herself walking into his fancy office in her Goodwill clothes. But something, call it desperation, call it hope, call it faith, made her drive downtown instead. The Westbrook Enterprises building was 40 stories of steel and glass, the kind of place where everyone walking through the revolving doors wore suits that cost more than her monthly rent. Sarah parked her taxi 3 blocks away because she couldn't afford the parking garage rates, checked her reflection in a store window, and tried to smooth down her hair. The lobby took her breath away. Marble floors, artwork that belonged in museums, a reception desk made of dark wood that gleamed under perfect lighting. Everyone moved with purpose and confidence, carrying leather briefcases and talking on expensive phones. Sarah felt like an imposter, like someone playing dress-up in a world where she didn't speak the language. Can I help you? The receptionist was young, polished, with a smile that was professional but not quite warm. I have an appointment, Sarah said, her voice smaller than she wanted, with Mr. Westbrook, at 2 o'clock. My name is Sarah Mitchell. The receptionist checked her computer screen, and her expression changed subtly surprise, then interest. "Oh yes, Miss Mitchell, Mr. Westbrook is expecting you. Please take the private elevator to the executive floor, 40th floor." The private elevator. Sarah had never been in a private elevator. It was all glass and chrome, rising so smoothly she barely felt the movement, offering views of the city that made her dizzy. Through the window, she could see her entire neighborhood. The apartment building where she lived was just a small rectangle in the distance. The 40th floor was quieter than the lobby, carpeted in deep blue with artwork on the walls and glass offices where serious-looking people worked at computers. A woman in her 30s, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, approached with a warm smile. "Ms. Mitchell, I'm Jennifer Park, Mr. Westbrook's executive assistant. He's ready to see you. Right this way." Sarah followed Jennifer through a hallway that felt longer than it probably was, past offices and conference rooms, until they reached a set of double doors at the end. Jennifer knocked once, opened the door, and gestured for Sarah to enter. Richard Westbrook's office was enormous. Windows lined two walls, offering a panoramic view of the city. His desk was organized but not sterile, with family photos mixed among the business documents. And there, in one frame, Sarah recognized the woman she had seen in the window, Richard's wife, smiling despite her obvious illness. Richard stood up from behind his desk, smiling. He looked different in daylight, more real, less like a figure from another world. He was just a man. A powerful man, yes, but still just a man. "Sarah," he said, walking around the desk to shake her hand. "Thank you for coming. Please, sit down." Sarah sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk, her hands folded in her lap, trying not to look as nervous as she felt. "Could I get you anything?" Richard asked. "Water?" "No, thank you, sir." Richard sat down in the chair next to her rather than behind his desk, a gesture Sarah recognized as intentional, an attempt to make this feel less like a business meeting. "I want to tell you a story," Richard said, "and then I want to make you an offer. Is that all right?" Sarah nodded, not trusting her voice. 30 years ago," Richard began, "I was 19 years old, working as a janitor in a hotel. I had dropped out of college because I couldn't afford it, and I was sleeping on a friend's couch, trying to figure out how to survive. One night, while cleaning rooms, I found a briefcase that a guest had left behind. Inside was $50,000 in cash and documents related to a business deal." Sarah's eyes widened. "I was desperate," Richard continued, "broke, hungry. I had $8 to my name and no idea how I would pay rent the next month. That $50,000 could have changed my life." "What did you do?" Sarah whispered. "I returned it. I called the guest, tracked him down, and gave him back the briefcase." Richard smiled at the memory. He was a venture capitalist. He had written off the money, assumed it was gone. When I returned it, he was so impressed that he asked me what I wanted to do with my life. I told him I wanted to start a business but couldn't afford to finish college. Richard gestured around the office. "He became my mentor. He invested in my first company. He taught me everything I know about business. And 30 years later, that one decision to return something that wasn't mine led to all of this." Sarah felt tears prickling behind her eyes. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because last night," Richard said, his voice thick with emotion, "you reminded me of who I used to be. You reminded me that integrity isn't about being perfect or wealthy or educated. It's about making the right choice when it costs you something." He paused. "My wife has been very sick. Cancer. Stage 4. We've been fighting it for 2 years, and honestly, I've been so focused on saving her that I've forgotten what it means to see goodness in the world." "You reminded me." "I don't understand what you want from me," Sarah said quietly. Richard leaned forward. "I want to offer you a job. A real job. Not driving a taxi. Not cleaning offices. A position here at my company." Sarah's heart stopped. "Sir, I don't have a college degree. I barely graduated high school. I'm not qualified to work in a place like this." "You're more qualified than you know," Richard said firmly. "I built this company on one principle. Character matters more than credentials. I can teach someone skills. I can't teach them to be honest, hardworking, and kind. You've already proven you have those qualities." "What kind of job?" Sarah asked, barely breathing. "I want to create a position for you in our community outreach department. We work with charities, nonprofit organizations, and local programs that help families in need. You understand those families because you're one of them. You have perspective, empathy, and insight that my executives who've never worried about money will never have. I need your voice at the table." Sarah stared at him. "How much does it pay?" Richard named a figure that made Sarah's head spin. It was more than she made in 6 months driving the taxi and cleaning offices combined. Plus full benefits, Richard added. Health insurance, dental, vision, and we have an employee assistance program that includes help with dependent medical costs. Medical costs, Sarah repeated, the words catching in her throat. For your son, Richard said gently. Jennifer mentioned that you asked about dependent coverage when she called to confirm your appointment. I want you to know that we have one of the best health plans in the state. Your son's insulin would be fully covered. No copays, no deductibles. Sarah couldn't speak. She couldn't breathe. The room blurred as tears filled her eyes. Why? She finally managed. Why would you do this for me? Richard stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. Because someone did it for me 30 years ago. Because my wife is lying in a hospital bed right now, and the doctors have told me to prepare for the worst. And I'm realizing that the only thing that matters in life is how we treat each other. Because you made a choice last night that most people wouldn't make, and I want to honor that choice. He turned back to her. I can't save my wife, but maybe I can help save yours and your son's life. Maybe that's what this is about. Maybe you returning my wallet wasn't just good luck for me. Maybe it was divine intervention for both of us. Sarah put her face in her hands and wept not from sadness but from relief so profound it felt like drowning in reverse, like being pulled from water just when her lungs were about to give out. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say yes, Richard said. Come work for me. Start next Monday. I'll have Jennifer handle all the paperwork. You'll never have to clean another office or drive another taxi unless you want to. Sarah looked up at him through her tears. I don't deserve this. Neither did I 30 years ago. But sometimes grace isn't about deserving, it's about receiving. Richard smiled. Besides, you'll work hard, you'll earn every penny. I'm not doing charity, I'm making a smart business decision. The best employees are the ones who understand what it means to struggle. Sarah stood up on shaking legs and extended her hand. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Richard shook her hand, then pulled her into a brief fatherly hug. Welcome to Westbrook Enterprises, Sarah. I have a feeling you're going to change a lot of lives here. Sarah left that office in a daze. She rode the glass elevator down 40 floors, walked through the marble lobby, emerged onto the city street, and stood there in the afternoon sunshine, not quite believing what had just happened. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel's school. This is the nurse. Daniel's blood sugar dropped during gym class. We've handled it, but he needs to see his doctor soon. Please call when you can. Sarah looked up at the Westbrook Enterprises building, towering above her. By Monday, Daniel would have the best health insurance available. By Monday, she would have a real job. By Monday, everything would change. She had done the right thing. And for the first time in her life, the right thing had actually led to something beautiful. Sarah walked back to her taxi, got inside, and called the school nurse. This is Sarah Mitchell, she said, her voice steady and strong for the first time in years. I'm Daniel's mother. Tell me what he needs and I'll make sure he gets it. Everything was going to be okay. Finally, everything was going to be okay. Sarah stood outside Westbrook Enterprises at 8:45 a.m. on Monday morning, wearing a new suit that Daniel had insisted she buy. You need to look professional, Mama, he had said seriously, sitting on her bed while she tried on outfits from the discount store. Like you belong there. The suit was simple navy blue, nothing fancy, but it was new, and it fit, and when Sarah looked in the mirror, she almost didn't recognize herself. She looked like someone who worked in an office building. Someone who had a career. Someone who belonged. Daniel had gotten up early to make her breakfast toast that was slightly burned and orange juice poured carefully into her favorite mug. He had sat across from her at their small kitchen table, grinning with pride. Today is your first day at your new job, he had said. I'm so proud of you, Mama. Sarah had hugged him tight, this brave little boy who deserved so much more than she had been able to give him. Soon she could. Soon everything would be different. Now, standing outside the building, Sarah took a deep breath and walked through the revolving doors. Jennifer Park met her in the lobby, smiling warmly. "Good morning, Sarah. Ready for your first day?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Sarah said honestly. "You're going to do great. Follow me. I'll show you to your office." Office. Sarah had an office. The word still didn't feel real. They took the private elevator to the 27th floor, not as high as Richard's executive suite, but high enough that Sarah could see most of the city through the windows. The community outreach department occupied the south corner of the floor, a suite of offices and conference rooms with large windows and modern furniture. "This is your office," Jennifer said, opening a door. It was small but beautiful. A desk with a computer, a bookshelf, a window overlooking the city, a nameplate on the door that read, "Sarah Mitchell, Community Outreach Coordinator." Sarah touched the nameplate with trembling fingers. "This is really mine." "It's really yours," Jennifer said. "Your computer is already set up with your login information. You have a company email address, and your health insurance goes into effect today. I've already sent you the enrollment forms, but I flagged Daniel's information as priority. His medication should be covered starting immediately." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Thank Mr. Westbrook. He made sure everything was expedited." Jennifer checked her watch. "Team meeting in 15 minutes. I'll introduce 1421 you to everyone. For now, settle in and let me know if you need anything." After Jennifer left, Sarah sat down at her desk and looked around her new office. From this window, she could see her old neighborhood, the apartment building, the street she had driven her taxi through every night. But she was here now, on this side of the glass, on this side of the divide. Her phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. "Good luck today, Mama. You're going to be amazing. I love you." Sarah smiled and typed back, "I love you too, sweetheart. Thank you for believing in me." The team meeting was both terrifying and wonderful. Sarah met her colleagues, 6 other people in the community outreach department, all of them educated, professional, and intimidatingly competent. They welcomed her warmly, introducing themselves and explaining their various projects. Michael handled partnerships with food banks. Lisa worked with homeless shelters. David coordinated youth education programs. Each of them had impressive credentials and years of experience. And then there was Sarah, who had a high school diploma and 5 years of driving a taxi. "Sarah brings a unique perspective to our team," Jennifer said during the introductions. "She has first-hand experience with the communities we serve, and Mr. D.All. Westbrook specifically wanted her insight on our programs." Everyone nodded politely, but Sarah could see the questions in their eyes. Who was she? Why was she here? What made her qualified? The first few days were overwhelming. Sarah attended meetings where people used acronyms she didn't understand. She reviewed program budgets that contained more money than she had seen in her entire life. She sat in conference rooms with nonprofit directors and city officials, trying to follow conversations about grant proposals and impact assessments. She felt stupid, inadequate, like a child playing at being an adult. But she showed up every morning. She took notes. She asked questions when she didn't understand. And she listened, really listened to what people were saying. On Wednesday, during a meeting about a new program to help families with medical debt, Sarah noticed something. "Excuse me," she said quietly, interrupting the director of planning mid-sentence. "Can I ask a question?" Everyone turned to look at her. She felt her face flush, but continued anyway. "You're planning to distribute applications through hospitals and doctors' offices, right? For families who need help paying medical bills?" "That's correct," the director said. "The families who need this program most won't get those applications," Sarah said. "They don't go to doctors because they can't afford the appointments. They wait until it's an emergency, and then they go to the ER. And by then, they're drowning in debt. If you want to reach the families who really need help, you have to go where they actually are." The room fell silent. The director frowned. "Where would you suggest?" "Grocery stores in low-income neighborhoods, laundromats, check-cashing places, community centers, the places where families go when they're just trying to survive day to day. That's where you'll find the people who need help but would never think to ask for it." The director looked at Richard, who was sitting at the head of the table. Richard smiled. "That's exactly the kind of insight I was hoping for," he said. "Sarah, work with Michael to revise the distribution strategy. Let's make sure this program reaches the people who need it most." After the meeting, Michael approached her with genuine respect. "That was brilliant. I never would have thought of that." "You would have," Sarah said. "You just haven't lived it." "No," Michael admitted. "I haven't. That's why we need you here." By the end of the second week, Sarah wasn't just attending meetings, she was leading them. Her colleagues began seeking her opinion on program designs, asking her to review their proposals, inviting her to contribute ideas. She discovered something surprising. She was good at this, not despite her background, but because of it. She knew what families needed because she had been that family. She understood the barriers that kept people from asking for help because she had faced those barriers. She could identify the gaps in programs because she had fallen through those gaps herself. One evening, working late in her office, Sarah heard a knock on her door. Richard stood there, smiling. "Burning the midnight oil?" he asked. "Just finishing a proposal for the medical debt program," Sarah said. "We're going to pilot it in 3 neighborhoods next month." Richard walked into her office and sat down in the chair across from her desk. "How are you doing, Sarah?" "Really?" Sarah considered the question carefully. "I'm scared every day that I'll fail, that I'll prove everyone right who thought I didn't belong here. But I'm also happier than I've been in years. I feel like I'm making a difference." "You are making a difference," Richard said firmly. "Do you know what Michael told me yesterday? He said you've revolutionized how he thinks about community outreach." Lisa said the same thing. "You've been here 2 weeks, and you've already changed the way my entire department operates." "I'm just using common sense," Sarah said. "No, you're using wisdom earned through experience. There's a difference." Richard paused. "How is Daniel?" Sarah's face lit up. "He's wonderful. His blood sugar has been stable since we got the new insurance. He started his new medication, the one I could never afford before. He's like a different child, more energy, happier, healthier. Last week he made the soccer team at school. I got to watch his first practice without worrying about whether I'd have to leave early for work." "I'm glad," Richard said quietly. "My wife asks about you. She wants to meet you sometime when she's feeling strong enough." "I'd like that," Sarah said. "How is she doing?" Richard's smile faltered. "Not well. But she has good days still. And on those good days, she tells me that hiring you was one of the best decisions I've ever made. She says you remind her of why we built this company, to make a real difference in people's lives." Sarah's throat tightened. "Please tell her thank you for believing in me. Tell her yourself when you meet her. She'd like that." Richard stood up. "Don't stay too late. Go home to your son. The work will be here tomorrow." After Richard left, Sarah packed up her things and took the elevator down to the parking garage. She had started parking in the building. Now she had an employee parking pass, a small plastic card that opened the gate. Such a simple thing, but it made her feel like she belonged. She drove home in her taxi. She had kept it, even though she didn't need it anymore. It was paid off and she liked having the independence. But now, instead of driving for 15 hours a day to survive, she drove home to her son with energy left over to help with homework and cook dinner and actually be present. Daniel was waiting at the kitchen table when she arrived, his homework spread out in front of him, working on a math problem. "Mama." He jumped up and hugged her. "How was work?" "Good, sweetheart. Really good." "How was school?" "Great. Coach said I'm getting better at soccer. And guess what? I got an A on my science test." Sarah pulled back to look at his face, bright, healthy, happy. This was what she had been fighting for. This moment, this boy, this chance at a normal life. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "I'm proud of you too, Mama," Daniel said seriously. "You're changing people's lives." "How do you know that?" "Because you changed mine." Sarah hugged him again, holding tight to this precious, perfect child who had survived so much and still believed the world was good. She had done the right thing 2 weeks ago, returning that wallet, and doing the right thing had led her here to this job, this opportunity, this chance to not just survive, but to thrive. Faith, she realized, wasn't about knowing how things would work out. It was about doing the right thing anyway and trusting that goodness would follow. And it had. It finally had. 3 months into her new job, Sarah received an invitation she hadn't expected. It came through email from Richard Westbrook himself, and the subject line simply read, "Dinner with Margaret and me." Sarah opened it with curiosity. Dear Sarah, Margaret has been asking to meet you for months now. She's having a good week, and we'd love to have you and Daniel over for dinner this Saturday if you're available. Nothing formal, just a chance to get to know each other. Margaret wants to thank you in person for what you did. Please say yes. Richard. Sarah stared at the screen. Dinner at the Westbrook mansion, with Richard's dying wife, with Daniel. She typed back immediately, we'd be honored. Thank you. Saturday evening, Sarah and Daniel drove to the neighborhood she had parked in 3 months ago, when she had been considering keeping that wallet. The mansion looked even more beautiful in the early evening light, with warm glows coming from the windows and autumn leaves scattered across the manicured lawn. Daniel was dressed in his church clothes, khaki pants, and a button-down shirt that Sarah had bought specifically for this occasion. He was nervous and excited, clutching a drawing he had made as a gift. Is it okay to bring her a picture? He had asked that morning. I think she'll love it, Sarah had assured him. Richard answered the door himself, wearing casual clothes and a warm smile. Sarah, Daniel, come in, come in. The inside of the house was even more beautiful than Sarah had imagined, but also surprisingly normal. Yes, the furniture was expensive and the artwork was original, but there were also family photos on the walls, comfortable throws on the couches, and the smell of home-cooked food coming from the kitchen. Margaret is in the sitting room, Richard said. She's been looking forward to this all week. They followed him through the house to a bright room with large windows overlooking a garden, and there, sitting in a comfortable chair with a blanket over her lap, was Margaret Westbrook. She was thin, heartbreakingly thin, with skin that seemed almost translucent, and a scarf wrapped around her head where her hair had been, but her eyes were bright and alert, and when she saw Sarah and Daniel, her face lit up with genuine warmth. Sarah, she said, extending a hand. Her voice was weak but steady. I've wanted to meet you for so long. Sarah crossed the room and took Margaret's hand gently, afraid she might break it. Mrs. Westbrook, it's an honor. Please, call me Margaret, and this must be Daniel. Daniel stepped forward shyly. I made you something, he said, holding out his drawing. Margaret took it carefully and studied it. The picture showed a woman with a crown of stars, surrounded by hearts and flowers. At the bottom, Daniel had written, For Mrs. Westbrook, thank you for helping my mama. Margaret's eyes filled with tears. Daniel, this is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given me. May I hang it up? Daniel nodded vigorously. Richard, will you put this on the refrigerator, please? Margaret handed him the drawing. Right in the center. As Richard walked away with the picture, Margaret gestured to the chairs near her. Please, sit. I want to hear everything. They talked for over an hour before dinner. Margaret asked about Daniel's soccer team, his school, his health. She asked Sarah about the community outreach department, about the programs they were developing, about her transition from taxi driver to coordinator. And then Margaret said something that caught Sarah off guard. Richard told me what you did, returning the wallet, choosing honesty when you were desperate. I want you to know something, Sarah. That decision didn't just help us. It saved my husband's faith in humanity. Sarah frowned. I don't understand. Margaret glanced at Richard, who had returned from the kitchen. He nodded, giving her permission to continue. A year ago, Margaret said, before I got sick, Richard and I were in a very dark place. We had just lost a major business deal to a competitor who used fraud and deception to win. Richard was devastated. He started questioning whether honesty even mattered anymore, whether good people could succeed in a world where cheaters seemed to win. Margaret paused, gathering strength. I got my cancer diagnosis a month later, and Richard felt like God was punishing him for something. He started to become bitter, cynical. The man I married, the man who built this company on integrity, was disappearing. Richard sat down on the arm of Margaret's chair, taking her hand. Then you returned the wallet, Margaret continued, with all that money. Richard came home that night and cried. He said he had lost his faith in people, and a single mother who had every reason to keep that money chose to give it back instead. He said it was a sign, a reminder that goodness still exists. Sarah felt tears rolling down her cheeks. I just did what anyone should do. No, Richard said firmly. Most people wouldn't have done what you did, and by doing it you reminded me of who I wanted to be. You gave me hope when I had none left. Margaret squeezed Richard's hand. That's why I wanted to meet you. to thank you. You changed my husband's life, and in doing so, you made the time I have left with him so much better. He's himself again. Daniel, who had been listening quietly, suddenly spoke up. My mama says that doing the right thing is its own reward, even when it's hard. Margaret looked at Daniel with profound affection. Your mama is a very wise woman, and you are a very special young man. Dinner was simple but delicious: chicken, vegetables, fresh bread. Margaret ate only a little, but she laughed and told stories and seemed genuinely happy. Richard kept glancing at his wife with such love and tenderness that it made Sarah's heart ache. After dinner, Daniel helped Richard clear the table while Margaret asked Sarah to wheel her to the window. They sat together, looking out at the garden where leaves were falling in the autumn wind. I'm dying, Sarah, Margaret said quietly. The doctors have given me a few months, maybe less. Sarah didn't know what to say, so she simply took Margaret's hand. I'm not afraid, Margaret continued. I've had a wonderful life. I've loved and been loved. I'm at peace. She turned to look at Sarah. But I worry about Richard. When I'm gone, he'll be alone. He'll throw himself into work and forget to live. What do you want me to do? Sarah asked. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep working at the company. Keep showing him that goodness exists. Keep reminding him why we built all of this: to help people, to make a difference, to leave the world better than we found it. Margaret squeezed Sarah's hand. Promise me you'll look after him. I promise, Sarah whispered. Margaret smiled. Good. You know, I told Richard to hire you, not because of what you did with the wallet, but because of who you are. The world needs more people like you, Sarah. People who choose integrity over convenience. People who believe in doing right even when it costs them. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the garden. Can I ask you something? Sarah said finally. Of course. Why did this happen? Why did I find that wallet at exactly the moment I needed help most? Why did returning it lead to all of this? It feels too perfect to be coincidence. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I don't know if there's a grand design to the universe, Sarah, but I do know this. When you make the right choice, even when it's hard, you open doors you didn't know existed. You found the wallet because you were working hard to provide for your son. You returned it because you have integrity, and that integrity attracted people who recognize and value it. Maybe that's not divine intervention. Maybe it's just the natural consequence of being a good person in a world that desperately needs them. I like that, Sarah said. So do I, Margaret said. It means we're not powerless. It means our choices matter. When it was time to leave, Margaret hugged Daniel tightly. You take care of your mama, she whispered. She's one of the good ones. I know, Daniel said. She's my hero. Richard walked Sarah and Daniel to the door. Thank you for coming. This was one of Margaret's good days, and you made it even better. Thank you for having us, Sarah said. For everything. I can never repay what you've done for us. You already have, Richard said. Just keep being who you are. On the drive home, Daniel was quiet, processing the evening. Mama, he said finally, Mrs. Westbrook is really sick, isn't she? Yes, sweetheart. She is. Is she going to die? Sarah's throat tightened. Probably. Yes. Daniel thought about this. I'm glad we got to meet her. She's really nice. She is. Do you think she's sad? About dying? Sarah pulled up to a red light and turned to look at her son. I think she's at peace. She's lived a good life, and she's loved people, and she's made a difference in the world. That's all any of us can hope for. Daniel nodded seriously. When I grow up, I want to be like that, like Mrs. Westbrook. And like you, Mama, I want to make a difference too. Sarah reached over and squeezed his hand. You already do, baby. You already do. That night, after Daniel was asleep, Sarah sat at her kitchen table and thought about everything that had happened since that November evening 3 months ago. She had been so close to keeping that wallet, so close to choosing the easy path, but she hadn't. And because of that one decision, that one moment of choosing right over easy, her entire life had changed. Daniel was healthy. She had a career. They had financial security. She was making a difference in her community. helping families like hers avoid the desperation she had known. And she had met two remarkable people who had shown her that kindness and integrity still mattered in the world. Margaret was right. Choices mattered. Character mattered. Doing the right thing, even when it was hard, created ripples that extended far beyond what you could see. Sarah pulled out her laptop and began writing a proposal for a new program, a support network for single parents struggling with medical costs. She worked late into the night, energized by purpose, driven by the knowledge that her work could help families avoid the suffering she had endured. She was exactly where she was supposed to be, doing exactly what she was meant to do. And it had all started with a simple choice, to do the right thing, even when it cost her everything. 6 months later, on a cold spring morning, Sarah stood in front of a conference room full of nonprofit directors, community leaders, and city officials, presenting the new single-parent medical support program. She wasn't nervous anymore. Over the past months, she had discovered a confidence she never knew she possessed, not arrogance, but the quiet assurance that comes from knowing your purpose and living it fully. The traditional approach to medical assistance focuses on crisis intervention, Sarah said, clicking to the next slide of her presentation. We wait until families are drowning in debt, until their children are in the emergency room, until they've lost everything. This program takes a different approach. We intervene early, providing preventative support, connecting families with resources before they reach crisis point. She clicked again, showing photos of the families they had already helped. In the past 3 months, we've served 247 families. We've prevented $17,000 in emergency room visits by connecting parents with preventative care. We've helped 53 children with chronic conditions get the medications they need. And we've given families something equally important: dignity. Hope, the knowledge that they're not alone. The room erupted in applause. Sarah smiled, but her mind was elsewhere on Richard, who was sitting in the back row, and on Margaret, who wasn't there. Margaret had passed away 6 weeks ago, peacefully, in her sleep, with Richard holding her hand. The funeral had been beautiful, hundreds of people sharing stories of her generosity, her kindness, her impact on their lives. Daniel had insisted on going, wanting to say goodbye to the woman who had hung his drawing on her refrigerator. Richard had been devastated, but he had also been grateful. She lived to see her program launch, he had told Sarah at the funeral. She was so proud of what you're building. Now, as the presentation ended and people lined up to ask questions and discuss partnerships, Richard approached Sarah with a smile that still carried the weight of grief, but also something else: pride. Margaret would have loved this, he said quietly. I wish she could have seen it, Sarah replied. She did, every step of the way. You gave her hope in her final months, Sarah. You reminded her that the company we built together was doing good work, making a real difference. That mattered to her more than you'll ever know. After the conference, Sarah drove to Daniel's school to pick him up. He had started middle school that fall, joining the advanced math class and the debate team. The sickly, struggling boy he had been a year ago was gone, replaced by a confident, healthy teenager who was thriving. How was school? Sarah asked as he climbed into the car. Good. I got an A on my history project, and Coach wants me to try out for the travel soccer team. That's wonderful, sweetheart. Oh, and Ms. Rodriguez asked if you could come speak to our class next week. We're studying community service, and she wants you to talk about your job. Sarah glanced at her son. You told your class about my work. Daniel looked at her with surprise. Of course. You're helping so many people, Mama. I'm proud of you. Sarah's eyes stung with tears. When did you get so grown up? I learned from the best, Daniel said simply. That evening, after dinner and homework, Sarah sat on the couch with Daniel, watching a movie they had both seen a dozen times. It was their Friday night tradition. Now no phones, no distractions, just the two of them spending time together. During a commercial break, Daniel said, Mama, can I ask you something? Always. Do you ever think about that night, when you found the wallet? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Sometimes. Why? I was thinking about it in school today. If you had kept that money, we would have been okay for a while. We would have had the insulin I needed, but you gave it back anyway. He looked at her seriously. I want you to know that I understand why you did that, and I'm proud of you for it. Sarah put her arm around her son. Thank you, sweetheart. That means everything to me. Ms. Rodriguez said that integrity is doing the right thing even when no one is watching. But you did the right thing even when it hurt you. That's even better, isn't it? I suppose it is, Sarah said softly. I want to be like that, Daniel said. When I grow up, I want to make choices that help people, even when it's hard, like you do. Sarah pulled him close, this remarkable boy who had survived so much and emerged with such a pure heart. You're already doing that, Daniel. Every day. 2 weeks later, Sarah received a letter marked personal and confidential. It was from Richard Westbrook's attorney. With trembling hands, she opened it. Dear Miss Brooks, Mitchell, as executor of Margaret Westbrook's estate, I'm writing to inform you that Mrs. Westbrook left a bequest in your name. Per her final wishes, she has established the Daniel Mitchell Education Fund, with sufficient resources to cover your son's college education at any institution he chooses to attend. Additionally, Mrs. Westbrook left you a personal letter. It is enclosed. Sarah's vision blurred as she opened the second envelope. Margaret's handwriting was shaky but legible. Dear Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I hope I lived long enough to see your program launch. I hope I got to tell you one more time how much you've meant to Richard and to me. The education fund is my way of thanking you for giving my husband hope when he had lost it. Daniel is a special boy, and he deserves every opportunity. Make sure he knows he can be anything he wants to be. But more than the money, I want to give you this, my blessing. You are doing sacred work, Sarah, helping families, giving hope to people who have none, showing the world that kindness still exists. Don't stop. Don't ever stop. The world needs more people like you people, who choose integrity over convenience. People who believe in doing good even when it costs them. You are changing lives. You are making a difference. Never doubt that. Thank you for reminding an old woman that goodness still exists in this world. Thank you for taking care of my Richard. Thank you for being exactly who you are. With love and gratitude, Margaret Sarah sat at her kitchen table and wept for Margaret, for the generosity she could never repay, for the life she had built from a single moment of choosing right over easy. That weekend, she took Daniel to visit Margaret's grave. They brought flowers and stood quietly in the spring sunshine. She was really special, wasn't she, Mama? Daniel said. She was, Sarah agreed. She believed in the power of kindness. She believed that our choices matter. Do you think she was right? Sarah looked at her son, healthy, happy, standing in the sunshine with his whole life ahead of him, full of dreams and possibilities that wouldn't exist if she had made a different choice that November night. Yes, Sarah said. I know she was right. 5 years passed. The single-parent medical support program had expanded to serve over 1,500 families annually. Sarah had been promoted to Director of Community Outreach, overseeing a team of 12 people. Daniel had just finished his junior year of high school with a 4.0 GPA and a full scholarship offer to 3 universities. And Richard Westbrook, still missing his wife but honoring her memory through his work, had made Sarah a partner in Westbrook Enterprises. You've earned it, he had said simply. You've transformed this company. You've changed countless lives. Margaret would be so proud. One evening, Sarah was invited to speak at her former taxi company's annual meeting. The owner wanted her to talk to the drivers about perseverance and hope. Standing in front of a room full of taxi drivers, men and women, who worked multiple jobs, who struggled to make ends meet, who knew exactly what she had survived, Sarah told her story. She told them about that November night, about finding the wallet, about the choice that changed everything. I'm not special, she said. I was just a single mother trying to survive, just like many of you. But I want you to know this, your choices matter. Your integrity matters. The small decisions you make every day to be honest, to be kind, to do the right thing even when it costs you, those decisions create ripples you can't always see. She paused, looking around the room. I could have kept that money. No one would have known. No one would have blamed me, but I would have known. And my son would have learned that desperate circumstances justify dishonest choices. Instead, he learned that integrity matters more than money. That lesson has shaped who he's becoming. Sarah smiled. I won't tell you that doing the right thing will always lead to a happy ending. Life doesn't work that way. But I will tell you this, when you act with integrity, when you choose kindness over convenience, you become the kind of person who attracts good things. You open doors you didn't know existed. You create possibilities you never imagined. After her speech, a young woman approached her, barely 21, with tired eyes and a baby on her hip. "Thank you," the woman whispered. "I've been so tempted to take shortcuts, to compromise what I know is right. Your story reminded me why I can't." Sarah hugged her. "You're stronger than you think. Keep going. Keep choosing right. It matters." That night, driving home in her nice car, not the old taxi which she had donated to a family in need, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here. One wallet, one choice, one moment of deciding that integrity mattered more than desperation. That single decision had changed everything. Not because the universe rewarded her for being good, life wasn't that simple, but because choosing integrity had made her into someone who attracted people of integrity, someone who could be trusted with more responsibility, someone who could make a real difference in the world. The wallet had been a test, not from God or fate, but from herself. A test of who she was when no one was watching, when she had every excuse to compromise, when keeping it would have solved her immediate problems. And she had passed that test. That's the lesson. Character is revealed, not in moments of comfort, but in moments of crisis. Integrity is choosing right, even when it costs you everything. Faith is doing the right thing without knowing how it will work out. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, that faith is rewarded in ways you never imagined possible. Sarah's story reminds us that the smallest choices we make can have the biggest impact, not just on our lives, but on the lives of everyone we touch. When you're facing a difficult decision, when you're tempted to take the easy path, remember, your choices define who you are. Your integrity is the foundation of everything you build, and the person you become through hard choices matters more than temporary comfort. If this story touched your heart, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire faith, humanity, and hope. Remember, you are stronger than you think. Your choices matter, and doing the right thing, even when it's hard, is always worth it. God bless you and never lose faith.